Hi everyone, and welcome to this patch notes tier list rundown maybe. A little bit late this time, I know about this. There have already been several changes to different patch. I know that. I'm just a bit busy, and this is why I just had the time to create the tier list. I didn't play that much, and usually I want to try to get as many information before I create such a list in order to have it as updated and accurate as I can do it, or as I feel. Since there have been too many changes about the overall meta compared to last time, and as well about the overall usage and utilization of the units, I think I want to pick out a few targets, few units. I want to talk about 2 or 3 Mastermind options and about one spell in specific. And I think this is going to be all the topic about this video. If you're more interested in where each unit ranks, just check out the master sheet in the first, or in the link in the description down below. It is updated on a more or less regular level. You always see last update here at each list, and therefore yeah, you can just analyze it yourself. Alright, what are the units I want to talk about? Well, I think first of all, the most important change that have been made are 2 units. It is the ceiling, that is the new unit. It has changed a little bit in its usage. First of all, you basically had the OP tier 1 choice after the first hotfix, where you were able to build it to worker on wave 1 and then scale it throughout the game. And it was really broken because it was nearly holding anything in the first 5 waves, and then you just had a lot of value with it, and ongoing it was quite strong. Now it got nerfed a little bit, and I really do not see this choice too often. So players tend to not start with the Sakura. I think there's just one simple reason for it. There's actually 2 simple reasons for that. First of all, you start with 2 workers, especially in a high elo. It is necessary for you to start with a maximal aggressive start to increase your income, to increase your workers as soon as possible, to keep up the pressure on your opponent. Second reason is you're always depending on your mate, right? If the game is not super fast, no leaks, etc., where Sakura would profit a lot from, you will always have the risk of either leaking yourself and losing the stack on the wave, as well as your mate leaking and you're not able to cover without losing the Sakura. So you're always depending on 2 lanes in order to get those stacks, and you are required to get those stacks in order to make the unit really efficient. So I think those are the reasons why you do not really play it. Why is it still in B tier though? Because I think the Sakura would likely be rather a C tier unit. But there is this big fan still of Chloropixy. I think Chloropixy can work out pretty good. It is not played as much as I would have thought it is going to be played, because I think the Mythium generation rate is just a little too small, and then you always have those break waves with 7 and 8, and then later on 14, 15, where they are just not as good, and obviously they cost 100 gold and aren't a lot of value for their game cost. So I think those are 2 reasons why it is a little bit underperforming compared to what I thought it would be, but it's still quite strong if you can utilize it well. And the other unit I want to talk about, which is actually crucial, is the Bazooka. And you have seen my Bazooka for a long time in the D tier now. Why do I put it up to C tier? And there's quite a simple reason for that. We did have a change on the Pyro. For those that didn't know before, Pyro did deal reduced damage to flying waves, which are only waves 4 and 17, because due to the flying attribute of the wave, the hitbox of the units, or the pathing and the model is able to be a bit more squeezed together. means that a wave that is flying would be a lot closer together compared to a wave that is now walking on the ground. So it is more likely for the pyro to hit a larger part of the wave at the same time. And this way, pyro was stronger in theory on flying waves and got nerfed against those. Pyro now does not have this reduced attack damage anymore, and the only way this actually affects the game is wave 4, right? On wave 17, it's arcane. Pyros don't deal a lot of damage there because they're magic damage. So pyros are anyway trash on 17, so that is not gonna matter too much. But the wave 4 is crucial because you do have pyro being unleakable on the first 3 waves. I mean, yeah, sure you can leak a cannoneer on 3 or whatever, but apart from such unnormal sense, you're unleakable in the first 3 waves, and now you're basically unleakable in wave 4 as well with just a tiny add, and you can still push hard. I mean, you can probably go 7 or 8 workers with a pyro, just add some smaller stuff like a Varg or whatever, and you should be able to hold wave 4, maybe leak the ranged send or whatever, but you're overall going to perform really, really good. And this is a massive opener. I think there's almost no other openers that will be able to achieve such a worker push even without getting a send before. Like, you can even do this if you just got a send on 1 with a pyro, because usually on wave 4 you will be able to receive between like 80 to 100, and well, as I just said, you might leak the Hermit, you might leak the Cannoneer, but usually you should be able to hold the wave itself. And this makes pyro a really strong opener now, but you obviously do have all those weak waves 6, 7, 8 afterward. This is why I would only recommend playing pyro opener if you have good ads, for example Banana Bank or Doomsday Machine. And the way you would use them now is you build a pyro, add a little bit on 4, and then shift 5 completely to add a bigger unit on wave 6. In the best case, it's actually a Millennium, because Banco on 6 isn't as good as well. So pyro into Millennium is quite a good one, especially if you have APS together. Then there's anyway a great synergy between those 3 units. That can be a very good opener, or if you just have any other good options to hold those waves I just named. You will still have all those weak waves, and I still do not recommend playing pyro as a overall synergy, as an overall strategy, but the opener itself is amazing. Compared to the flower that was amazing before, it's a lot weaker now as an opener, but you might actually be able to push even a bit hard. Alright, talking about flower, I think this is one last unit, or one of 2 last units I want to talk about. Flower is a lot weaker as an opener now, right? You got HP reduction, so you will be more likely to leak, you will be more likely to lose the flower early on, then leak bigger amounts, or leak the whole wave because you just don't get the last hit out that you usually would have gotten. Why is flower still A tier? Well, this is quite a simple reason. Waves tend to go longer again, right? We did have this insane late game scaling meta until the worker changed. Now, then the worker change came where the double workers got reduced, got thrown out of the game, and the new worker production increasement got implemented, and games began to be a lot shorter. Now people started to figure out how those work, people are going to play safer again, play more for income king, etc. People tend, especially in the high elo, they do not, or most of them do not like to play those high save 1 to 6, because it's always a huge risk, but they rather try to scale a lot and then wait for this 1 or 2 waves you can see your opponent weak on. So games again start to get longer, and you see a lot of late game waves as well. And one of those late game waves that is still a major part is wave 16. And the problem is, if you have flower, you will be able to hold wave 16 in almost every case, right? You will be very likely to hold at least the units of wave 16 with a very high chance if you have, let's say, 3 or 4 death caps. And this is achievable, right? You get one of them, or you might open with a flower, you have 1 death cap on 12 already, maybe you have a flower additionally, and then you just upgrade 2 more death caps. for 16, then you have your 3 death caps, and you're very, very likely to hold the wave or maybe leak the range stunts that are at. But apart from that, usually you will hold wave 16 and have a great advantage. And this is an insane thing compared to other builds that will not give you this one wave safe hold. This was the same with boars before, where you just were not able to send 17 or 19 because the boars were holding there no matter what, even if you didn't have the perfect damage behind it. Now that's not the case anymore. That was like 1.5 years ago, but it's comparable with Flower right now. And this just gives you the option to win races. It gives you the option to just hold there and win that way. It's just a massive powerhouse that way. This is why Flower is still an A tier. And the last unit I just want to have a quick talk about is the Harpy. We do see Sky Queens coming into play more and more, which I'm really happy about, because I actually love the Sky Queen design. It's actually one of the units I love the design the most about. I still think it's not amazing. It's still getting outclassed by a lot of other units or a lot of other synergies, but I can see that it's coming back. It might be another buff needed, or maybe some other changes to units that synergize well with Sky Queen. But apart from that, I'm really, really happy to see it come to play. So, alright, that's about the units. Let's head over to the Mastermind option. And actually, with the Mastermind option, there was no changes, right? So I just want to talk about 2 things real quick. We have Cartel and Castle I want to talk about, because they are somewhat opposite. First of all, I did rate Castle very high before because there was still this meta of shorter games, right? I would assume the average game length was in between 13 and 14. Now wave or games are going a lot longer again, and I would assume maybe it's like 15, 16 now. I can't say for sure. So I think Castle is still a massive benefit if you can utilize it. You can play for the scaling, and if you're a good greedy player in the beginning, obviously you can't get starved, because otherwise Castle is a major deficit. But I think Castle is still very strong. However, I think Cartel is very strong. However, Castle, I think I can slowly see it coming back into play. I did still leave it at rank 3 for now. I still want to test it more, see how others react to it, because I started to play Castle a little bit. Again, just to test it out. I felt like it's good for me to improve again when playing a little bit more passive in the early game, in order to not leak too much in the early game, and then you have this natural scaling with the bonus income. That's just one thing I wanted to try it out, and I wanted to improve on certain aspects of my play again. That's why I'm playing a little bit more Castle at the moment compared to before, but I can actually see that it is working out quite well, and this is why I could imagine it is slowly ranking up on the same level as Cartel again. Either they're both going to be on 3, or they're both going to be on 2, which is the more likely thing at the moment that I can imagine. And jumping over to the Legion spells. We will have a quick talk about the tips and tricks section here as well, therefore I will move my camera, but let's have a look at the Tierlist first. We can see there is a change in the number 1 spell. It has been sacrificed for a long time, and I can still see people not thinking that sacrifice is that OP of a spell. Either it's my opinion, or you do not really understand the power of sacrifice in my eyes, but sacrifice is insane. But the new number 1 spell is even better. Have Glacial Touch. And in the tips and tricks section it says Glacial Touch is likely the strongest spell ever existed. And this is 100% the case. It already got hotfixed from 120 pure damage explosions to, I think it's 75 damage now, but it is still insane. I mean, what does Glacial Touch do, right? First, you do have a slow, 90% slow, I think it is, or 80 or 90% movement speed slow. This is crucial to any unit that has long range with Glacial Touch, and then units from the opposite side, or splitting, have to move over there, or let's say a boss on wave 20. I've seen a boss on wave 20, a Halo standing at the very back with the Glacial Touch, boss on wave 20, it's just not moving, and this gives you seconds of time. It might give you, I don't know, 10, 12, 13 seconds where you just win the race because of Glacial Touch. You do not hold yourself, but you just slow the unit as long that your opponents are going to lose. So you do have the slow, but in the main cases, this is not the OP part, but can help you out in races especially. But the OP part is the explosive damage. What does Glacial Touch do? The target is getting a mark, and as this mark is getting executed, which means the mark is present for 3 seconds, and as this unit with a mark dies within the time having that mark, it doesn't matter which unit kills it, it does explode in a small circle for 75 pure damage. And 75 pure damage might sound like a very, very small amount, but I mean, I think it's around the damage King Claw deals. And let's just get a few numbers. Wave 11, for example, does have HP pool of 1100, which means, well, yeah, you deal around, what is it, 7% of the HP? I didn't do the math quite, I just rounded in my head. So you deal 7% of the wave HP just through the spell, and it is very likely that those units are going to explode multiple times, so you might just be able to reduce the whole wave or a huge amount of the wave's HP, let's say 20-25% just due to the spell, which is massive. And this is why Glacial Touch is just imba, especially on waves with comparably low HP pools, which are especially 11-12, because they just are the first waves behind wave 10 where you get Glacial Touch, and the HP pool is there still fairly low, as well as 16 in particular, because it's a swarm wave and therefore the damage and the HP per unit is reduced compared to other waves. And on those waves you can really see the Glacial Touch effect. Often it is even better to not split and use the Glacial Touch for the AoE compared to splitting, especially on 16 that is the case. This just makes Glacial Touch such an OP spell. So if you have Glacial Touch, it is Glacial Touch as a pick there. At the moment, unless there's another change coming, this is the rule. And I'm pretty sure everyone that knows about Glacial Touch and how OP it is will confirm that if there's Glacial Touch in the game, you take Glacial Touch. Alright, last spell I want to talk real quick about is the Sorcerer. I moved it up a bit for one simple reason. It did not get changed, it did not get better in any sense, but I thought to myself, okay, Sorcerer overall does have very, very little units it is really good on. You still have Trinity Archer, you still have the Starcaller, maybe you still can utilize it well with a Haven in some cases, if it's getting buffed by Chieftains, for example, or in Syria, but that's about it. But if you have it on such units, especially the Trinity Archer, especially the Starcaller, it is broken, and I think this is why I just wanted to put it a little bit up in order to show that it's actually a good spell if used well. Alright, and now, last but not least, real quick, the section about, tips and tricks. I want to talk about real quick. We already noted that Glacial Touch is really, really strong and is best used on any ranged unit. It doesn't matter whether it is ranged or if it is melee. There is no reduction when putting the unit on, when putting the spell on a ranged unit, which I can see coming next. I think the best way to nerf Glacial Touch as it is now is same as you have it with Pulverizer, for example, reduce the stats with ranged unit. But one of the tips and tricks is the mask. You probably know that multi-attack units, masks, you have Aqua, you have Trinity Archer, they always only apply stacks to one target, right? Whether it is villain, whether it is pulverized, etc. But there's one exception, which is mask, because mask does not deal one attack to always the same unit, like for example Trinity Archer would do. Trinity Archer always attacks one unit, and all the other additional attacks, which is 4 for the Trinity Archer, can hit random targets. No, with a mask, every shot is 100% random, so it will spread its attack all over the units it can access. And since Glacial Touch keeps the stack on the unit for 3 seconds, which is a very, very long time, it is quite efficient to put Glacial Touch on a mask in order to spread the debuff on as many units as possible. Keep in mind that this can be an advantage in some cases and a disadvantage. It is an advantage if you have a big split, right? Let's say you have a wave of 12, half the wave going to the left, half the wave going to the right, so we have 6/6. The mask can only reach the 6 units it can attack, and therefore will be able to reach 3 or 4 units out of those 6 within the time range of 3 seconds. So all of them are getting debuffed, and if any of them explode or if any of them dies, it will explode, which is quite nice. Especially if you can reduce this amount from 6 to maybe 3 or 4, it's perfect because each of those units will be debuffed, and therefore you have maximized your efficiency on Glacial Touch. While it can be a deficit as well, because Mask might just attack a unit, all the other units are not attacking, and therefore they will kill units, but they don't have Glacial Touch as a debuff. So always keep in mind, is Mask and Glacial Touch now efficient for me? For example, using it in a split that is, for example, 70-30%, and you want the mask on the side where 70% of the units will path to, because then you can use it very efficiently. For example, on waves with smaller numbers, let's say 13 is one of the very good examples this can work out. Is this beneficial for you or not? Just as a tip, so that you know that Mask is the only unit that could give you the chance to spread Glacial Touch quite well all over the way. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this update. I hope you will check out the tier list if you have more questions or ask them in the comments. Have a good one. Bye bye.